Two fatalities in floodwaters turns the East Coast's emergency situation to tragedy. The Prime Minister forced to apologise after wrongly accusing a company of harassment within its own office. 7 years old and shot dead. The victims of Myanmar's violence become gradually younger.
When the war is all, got to get away.
And friends gather to remember the godfather of Australian music, Michael Gudinski.
This is SBS World News with Darren Mara.
Good evening. The tumultuous weather on Australia's east coast that has already caused widespread damage, separated families and isolated communities has now turned deadly. 2 men have died in floodwaters in New South Wales and Queensland. For an update on the fatality, our reporter Amelia Dunn is in Brisbane.
Police have confirmed they have located a body in an overturned ute in floodwaters in the Gold Coast hinterland. It's believed to be the body of 38-year-old David Horman. Now, Mr. Horman was last seen early on Monday morning around 6 a.m, which of course we know is when floodwaters were rising around the Gold Coast area. Now, emergency services were called to Canunga Creek this afternoon about midday, and Canunga Creek is about 25 kilometres away from the Gold Coast. His ute was located in floodwaters, and despite the fact SES did perform a swift water rescue, but were only able to retrieve his body. So after a very, very traumatic week for many citizens in southeast Queensland, now this news is going to come as a bit of a devastating blow here.
Amelia Dunn there in Brisbane. Well, a Pakistani national on his first day of a new contracting job has died after his car was trapped in floodwaters in northwest Sydney. Experts urge caution, with rivers not expected to begin subsiding until the weekend at the earliest.
Tragedy at Glenorrey on Sydney's northwestern outskirts. Police making the grim discovery of a man's body inside a car. Swept away in floodwaters, only recovered hours after police had responded to reports of a vehicle being trapped just before 6:30 a.m.
Look, it's a tragedy. Quite a lot of police. They had blocked off the road. You are so warned that there is a creek and a crossing and water coming.
Hours earlier, the New South Wales Premier had said it was a miracle no one had died. This afternoon, the Prime Minister offering a message of condolence to the man's family.
Their house will be dark and their grief will be great. I extend on behalf of the House our deepest condolences to that family.
A break in the weather offering a glimpse at the vast scale of this disaster, but no reprieve for those on the front lines of Sydney's floodwaters. Clear skies allowing helicopters access to areas which have been inaccessible until now.
I don't even know if I've had a proper sleep at all because we're just constantly up.
Massive insurance premiums on flood cover mean most here are priced out.
We're not insured. Flood covers, I think, about $10,000 a year or more. I don't really know. We looked at it at the beginning and went, no, it's not worth it. No one's really covered.
Susan Byan and her husband moved in a few streets away just last week. Today, she was still anxiously monitoring the Hawkesbury creep towards her home.
Since last night, it's highest this morning, a little bit more than last night.
Marine police becoming water taxis, ferrying much-needed supplies to stranded residents. The clear skies bringing a picture of serenity. But for many, it's now a long watch and wait for the water to recede as the real battle looms. Fresh flood evacuation orders forcing 6,000 people across New South Wales to leave their homes in the last 24 hours.
Today we still turn our minds to the thousands and thousands of people who are on evacuation warnings. For them, it will be an anxious day.
Authorities warning against complacency in the days ahead.
The flood risk remains really high in the Hawkesbury River, and as I say, we are seeing levels nearing a peak, but they're certainly going to stay high over the next few days.
The Mayor of Hawkesbury estimates that hundreds of homes have been lost, giving his assessment after flying over the flood-affected areas.
All the way along the river there's houses underwater. Sometimes you can just see the hint of a roof, other times you can see the house halfway out.
Thousands of families left picking up the pieces.
And Virginia Langerberg filed this update with the latest details on the New South Wales flood fatality a short time ago.
Well, the 25-year-old man has died here today. He is the first fatality in New South Wales in this flood emergency. Police held a press conference this afternoon and revealed the man had contacted 000 just before 6:30 this morning after his car had entered the water. He maintained contact with police for 44 minutes before that contact was lost, and shortly after that, officers arrived on scene but couldn't locate his car. Police helicopter was used above, searching the water, and sonar systems were also used in the water, but in the end it was police divers who located the car and the man. Now, what we know is that he's a Pakistani national. He was driving a brand new Toyota Camry which had been hired for the first day of his job, which he was starting today, and here's what police revealed about the circumstances around his death.
We can only speculate again that given what I've seen of the damage to the vehicle, that it could very well be that the electrics totally failed and he was simply unable to escape from the car, which is an absolute tragedy. Also too, the fact that he was on the phone for so long is even more tragic, and that's going to form part of our inquiries as to what actually went on in the car and why this tragic accident occurred.
Now, this tragedy comes after a turn in the weather today, but tonight a family has been left grieving.
Well, the dangers of the floods will linger for many days, particularly on the New South Wales north coast. Tonight, there are evacuation warnings and orders in place, with residents urged to follow the advice of authorities.
I just didn't want to grab the handle and keep your hand in.
The SES are evacuating residents out of this Riverside aged care home near Grafton.
Well, I've been a little bit nervous actually because it's my first time. But I guess, when we're told to do it, they know best. And at least we'll be safe.
Preparing for rising floodwaters.
On the current warnings, it appears that if the projections come to pass, that Ulmarra will be isolated.
Other locals in Grafton are watching the Clarence River swell. The sailing club is almost under, with the peak of the flood yet to come.
There's normally 20 metres or so of land between the river and the club.
We've gone from one extreme to the other, from droughts and, no water to now this. It's crazy.
The Clarence River is forecast to reach 6.8 metres.
We're expecting a major flood peak at Grafton overnight tonight. So, with floods continuing across the state, please keep up to date with the latest warnings.
Thousands in the region have been isolated by the floodwaters. To the north, the towns of Yamba and Korakai among those cut off. The SES keeping busy with rescues and delivering supplies.
We've had a couple where we've had to transport them for dialysis. We've had cattle being stranded, so that's a resupply for food.
To the south, the Defence Force is on the way to the mid-north coast region with 700 personnel to join the cleanup. The receding Manning River at Taree revealing the damage.
Their job will be out there cleaning up, making sure we get rid of the debris, supporting people, just having boots in the ground, having trucks there to take away the debris, making it easier for those who are going through the recovery process to help their healing.
Inland, the town of Moree is in danger of being cut in half by the floodwater. The Mihai River is due to peak in the next 2 hours at 10.4 metres. The council is deciding when to close the last connecting road.
We have one street left that we can get from north to south, and we will be leaving that open till the very, very last minute.
Locals were ordered to evacuate as early in the day as possible.
Particular focus this morning is what's happening in inland New South Wales, particularly at places like Moree, who are under an evacuation order at this point in time for major flooding.
Livestock and some crops are expected to be lost. It comes after a drought and a mouse plague, leaving locals looking for the positives.
This is nature's way of perhaps correcting the gross plague of mice that we have had.
One silver lining in a widespread disaster.
Jennifer Scherer there. Well, the Prime Minister has apologised to a news organisation after wrongly accusing the network of harassment within its own office. Scott Morrison made the comments as he was attempting to address the failings towards women in politics and ways to address a culture change in Parliament.
As Scott Morrison assesses the damage, another crisis in the capital is demanding his attention.
Doesn't it look like you've lost control of your ministerial staff?
Right now, you'd be aware in your own organisation that there is a person who has had a complaint made against them for harassment of a woman in a women's toilet.
That accusation strongly rejected by the news organisation in question and prompting this apology from the Prime Minister today.
I have apologised unreservedly for what I did in bringing that matter into that press conference and to raising something I should never have raised.
This as a former Tasmanian Liberal MP dropped this bombshell.
He then said, as for that Higgins girl, anybody who is so disgustingly drunk who would sleep with anybody could have slept with one of our spies and put the security of our nation at risk.
Recounting a conversation she had with Liberal Senator Eric Abetz.
It's a deeply distressing thing for anybody to say. I hope it was not said.
Senator Abetz categorically denying the comments made under parliamentary privilege.
To suggest that I would make light of a rape allegation is horrendous, categorically denied by myself.
Ms Hickey also says when questioning Mr Abetz about the minister allegedly at the centre of a historical rape claim, Mr Abetz responded it was the first law officer of the nation, but not to worry, the woman is dead and the law will protect him. Another accusation categorically denied by Mr Abetz.
No amount of denial by the Senator will remove this conversation from our community dialogue.
The Prime Minister standing by his Senator's account.
The comments that have been referred to by the Speaker are obviously repugnant, Mr Speaker, but what I can only refer to is the absolute denial of those statements.
It comes after a month of conversations around the culture at Parliament House and the treatment of women in politics, forcing the government to reflect on its policies, including the introduction of quotas to recruit more women into the party. Something the coalition has long resisted, but in the current climate...
I've never been a supporter of quotas. I've been public about that. But now I'm rethinking it.
Though some say it's not the only way to achieve gender parity.
I'm for the outcome, not the mechanism.
Just what that will be, something the Prime Minister is now being forced to confront.
The first batch of Australian-made AstraZeneca vaccine has left its Melbourne production plant, marking the country's independence from international supplies. The 830,000 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine will be distributed by health authorities. Another 2.5 million doses have already been produced and are waiting for approval.
12 months ago, we didn't think this would be possible. As I said earlier, this is the most amazing feat of human and science together.
The government is not expecting any more arrivals of the AstraZeneca vaccine from overseas. It's aiming to eventually produce up to 1 million doses a week at the CSL Melbourne facility. Coming up next, 7 mass shootings in 7 days. The tragedies that have once again brought the debate over US gun laws to the forefront.
Wall Street loves to use confusing terms to make you think only they can do what they do. So here's Margot Robbie in a bubble bath to explain.
The Big Short, Saturday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
These reports seem to confirm that this is happening in a number of locations all over the world.
The beginning of what seems to be a global event.
I believe we have detected evidence of extraterrestrial life.
I'm trying to keep us alive. Stop!
He needs to stop doing that.
I said stop!
Probably just likes her.
That's it. Oh! Man up! You're playing like a girl! Come on!
He hears us all the time.
He just misses me.
Stop!
That doesn't matter. There's no excuse.
Yeah, we need to chat with him.
Hey.
We all have the power to end violence. If you see disrespect, unmute yourself. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
Let me guess. eBay Tuesdays?
Best day to save on heaps of things, like hair straighteners.
Wow, it's really straight. Look at that one.
Drama here in the Beach Shade Wrestling. Cole Flowers has failed to put away his opponent.
Pretty embarrassing, JB. He was throwing heaps of shade, but in the end, guess who got burnt?
We all know these things don't fold easily.
Yeah, but these moves were as desperate as a backpacker on Bondi, and that killer reversal got him right in the beach balls.
After that pommy sail fail, the tent door was left wide open and the Aussie pounced on the goal.
On you, Sandy.
Another make-it-look-easy moment from Sportsbet.
SBS World Movies celebrates April's Fools with a week full of colourful comedy characters, 5 nights of full-filled funny films.
Don't stand there, Corbin!
My name is Erwin Fletcher. Will you kill me? Sure. C'est fini avec ça dans 3 mois. Avec ma prochaine vidéo, je vais exploser les 100 000 vues.
Would you like to talk about the meaning of life, darling?
Sure. Hey.
Great, yeah! I am dead.
I'm having a really tough week. I've got a kid who's trying to be a juggalo.
I was known as Vladislav the Poker.
When you're a vampire, you become very sexy.
It's a week of April's Fools, starting with Roxanne, Monday 9:30 on SBS World Movies.
New South Wales Nationals MP Michael Johnson has stood aside from his role as Parliamentary Secretary and will sit on the crossbench after revealing he is the subject of police investigation into the alleged rape of a sex worker. Mr Johnson issued a statement after Blue Mountains MP Trish Doyle used parliamentary privilege to tell State Parliament about the police investigation into an alleged assault at a lookout in September 2019. Mr Johnson maintains his innocence and says he is devastated by the allegations and will cooperate fully with police. A 7-year-old girl has become the youngest victim of the worsening violence in Myanmar. The junta has accused pro-democracy protesters of provoking the violence and levelled new corruption charges against ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. And a warning: this report includes disturbing images.
In the killing fields of Myanmar, the victims are becoming younger by the day. In Mandalay, the mother of 14-year-old Tun Tun Ong says a final goodbye. She explains how she'd given him her blessing to join the protests. Now my heart is broken, she says. Amid the grief, defiance. We'll fight until we win, his brother cries. Just outside the city, another makeshift memorial and another mother grieving at the spot where her 15-year-old son's life ended.
They brutally murdered my son. I want to kill them as they killed my son.
Overnight, a 7-year-old girl became the youngest known victim. A relative told local media that soldiers shot at her father, but hit the girl, who was sitting on his lap inside their home. Christopher Lamb was ambassador to what was then Burma in 1988, as the democracy movement was taking hold. He's not optimistic about a quick end to the violence.
The army can shoot people if they want to do so, but all they will do through that is to increase the hostility to them institutionally. The more of the killings that you refer to take place, the more of the deaths of people like the 7-year-old in Mandalay, the more difficult it will be for anybody on the democracy side to enter into a negotiation.
The junta has faced international condemnation for deposing elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. It's tried to justify its crackdown, displaying weapons it says were seized from protesters. And it showed video testimony of Yangon's former chief minister, accusing Ms Suu Kyi of accepting bribes. The spokesman was also asked about Australian Sean Turnell, an economic advisor to Ms Suu Kyi, who was detained in the early days of the takeover.
We are investigating him under Section 13(1) of the Immigration Act and the Official Secrets Act.
Mr Lamb knows Mr Turnell well.
One of the things that the military seems to have done with Sean is to fling at him accusations of involvement in perhaps money laundering, perhaps money hiding, perhaps assisting the enrichment of people in the NLD, none of which have got any substance.
Today, the streets are expected to be mostly quiet. People urged to stay at home and businesses to stay shut. Activists hoping a silent protest will make their voices heard. Nick Wells, SBS World News.
America's divisive debate over gun control has once again reignited in the wake of the country's 7th mass shooting in the past week. The deaths of 10 people, including a police officer at a supermarket in Boulder, Colorado, has prompted President Joe Biden to call for a ban on assault weapons and reforms around background checks. But usual political resistance remains.
Boulder, Colorado, a city in mourning after the latest shooting spree to rock the United States.
This has got to stop. Every week in the United States there's a shooting.
The afternoon attack at the King Soopers supermarket described as a relentless rampage.
He went in the store.
One witness live streaming the horror.
There's a shooter, active shooter.
As shoppers and people waiting for a COVID vaccination were fired on.
First shot, I thought it was an accident. I thought somebody dropped something. Second shot, that question was gone. Third shot, I knew it was gunfire.
Some people ran for their lives. Others hid in storage closets. But 9 civilians aged between 20 and 65 were unable to flee.
He was just a wonderful, wonderful man who didn't deserve this at all. We're devastated as a community.
Also killed Eric Talley, the first officer on the scene. The father of 7 ran in to stop the gunman before he was shot in the head.
Eric Talley died heroically. He died charging into the line of fire to save people who were simply trying to live their lives and go food shopping.
Officer Talley's patrol car draped in flowers, his police chief rattled. Her home 3 streets away.
You're worried about your neighbors, you're worried about your partner, you're worried about everything when you get that call. And so, yeah, I feel numb, and it's heartbreaking.
The suspected gunman, 21-year-old Ahmed Alissa, faces 10 charges of first-degree murder. His brother describing him as an increasingly paranoid man who may have been suffering from mental illness.
He's lived most of his life in the United States, and beyond that, we're still in the very early stages of the investigation.
Outside the White House, the American flag again lowered to half-mast. Inside, President Joe Biden demanding reform.
The United States Senate, I hope some are listening, should immediately pass the 2 House-passed bills that close loopholes in the background check system. This is not and should not be a partisan issue. This is an American issue. It will save lives, American lives, and we have to act. We should also ban assault weapons in the process.
A request key Republican senators have already rejected, despite 29 mass shootings with at least 4 people wounded in the past 23 days. Omar Dehan, SBS World News.
Coming up next, the weather and...
When the war is all, got to get away.
From Jimmy Barnes to Ed Sheeran, the star-studded tribute to Australian music icon Michael Gudinski.
SBS là nhà của một bộ sưu tập phim ảnh khổng lồ.
På mange forskellige sprog.
Wir brauchen eine Geschichte.
Des histoires qui changeront votre vision du monde.
فإنك لا ترى إلى أين يمكن للعالم أن يأخذك.
C'est un world, hein? SBS, un mundo de diferencias.
We've been cooking up a fresh new show. Start with some food-loving friends. Add a dash of spicy conversation and enjoy 5 nights a week.
The Cook Up with Adam Liao starts Monday 19th of April on SBS Food and On Demand.
Colorbond, made by Australia.
The police can't help themselves. My super doesn't work out for me. I'll be working forever.
Well, we've worked all our lives for this place. We'd hate to have to sell it to fund our retirement.
That's for sure.
Authorised by B. Dean for Industry Super Australia, Melbourne.
There's $100 grand up for grabs every week with the NRL's new free-to-play game, NRL Pick'em Weekly 4. Pick the winning margin from 4 nominated matchups to win a share of the weekly major prize. Head to nrl.com/pick'em now.
Imagine if you had a life-changing illness, but no one had ever given you a diagnosis.
Michael Mosley, What's My Diagnosis? Tomorrow 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
Each of these desolate houses holds hundreds of years of remarkable history. And now they are brought back to life in the ultimate medieval makeover.
Things that worry me are the things that we don't yet know about, the unknowns.
Witness these ancient buildings reform before your very eyes. Historic House Rescue starts Monday 7:30 on SBS and on demand.
To the weather forecast now. In the major centres, a shower or two with a likely storm in Darwin, sunny in Alice Springs, Brisbane and Perth, a possible shower in Sydney, a shower or two in Canberra and Melbourne. Showers easing in Hobart, partly cloudy in Adelaide. Looking further afield, partly cloudy in Wellington and Christchurch, thunder in Samoa, cloudy in Tahiti. In Southeast Asia, overcast in Bangkok, thunder in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, drizzle in Jakarta. Further north, cloudy in Beijing, Hanoi and Seoul, partly cloudy in Hong Kong, fine in Shanghai. Heading west, fine in Baghdad and Mumbai, partly cloudy in Beirut and Jerusalem, thunder in Tehran. Up to Europe, snow in Athens and Istanbul, fine in Moscow, showers in London, drizzle in Paris, overcast in Stockholm. In Africa, fine in Cairo, Addis Ababa and Dhaka, thunder in Johannesburg, partly cloudy in Nairobi. Over to South America, rain in Bogota, partly cloudy in Caracas, thunder in Rio, fine in Santiago. And for North America, cloudy in New York, snowy in Denver, thunder in Dallas, fine in LA and Mexico, showers in Vancouver. Well, a legend, a cultural icon and a pioneer. Scores of Australia's and the world's biggest artists have paid tribute to legendary music promoter Michael Gudinski at a state memorial tonight in Melbourne. Jimmy Barnes, Kylie Minogue and Ed Sheeran headlining a concert celebrating the life of the man known as the godfather of Australian music.
For a man who helped provide a nation its own soundtrack, a fitting farewell.
Dad would have only wanted tonight's events to be one thing, a celebration in his honour. A good night, a good time.
I'm high on the hill, looking over the bridge.
And that's what it was, as the best of Australia and the world lined up to thank a music icon.
Michael Gudinski was my mate. He was my brother. He was my partner in crime. You know, he was my hero.
Close friend Jimmy Barnes performing with daughter Mahalia and granddaughter Ruby, Michael's goddaughter.
I wish that heaven visiting hours.
British superstar Ed Sheeran quarantining for 2 weeks to deliver a song written for the legend.
But I know what they'd say.
While also recalling his first meeting with the bigwig, who quickly became a close friend.
He was just a tornado of joy, and just everywhere he went, he just lifted the room and then fucked off.
Michael Gudinski worked with countless artists in his almost 50-year career.
He was just a champion for musicians, and there'll never be anyone like him. We'll miss you, MG.
Everyone's going to miss his energy and passion every day.
Energetic young man.
The concert interwoven with a retrospective of Gudinski's pioneering career.
Michael was always, above all, a music fan, a punter. He cared very deeply about his artists.
To my dear friend Michael, life will never be the same
That's as far as I'm concerned.
Skyhooks, Split Ends and Archie Roach, among countless artists whose careers his mushroom records helped to soar.
Working with Michael Gudinski was a big influence on my career or my music as well. He gave us a chance.
Also sending video messages some of the world's biggest names.
I miss you, brother. I miss you.
I was honoured to work with him because people like him don't come along very often. We will cherish his memory, we'll miss him. Shine on, you crazy man.
He was a great guy to hang out with. He loved music, he loved musicians. Musicians loved him right back.
I will never forget just the wonderful times in my life that came about because of Michael and because he believed in me.
Michael did teach me to stage manage.
Kylie Minogue, who gave Mushroom Records its top-selling single of the 80s, rounding out the night.
The Big G took this little scrawny girl from Melbourne to the world and back home again.
Before one final duo of duets. 7,000 mourners inside Rod Laver Arena on their feet, and Michael Gudinski wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Omer Dihan, SBS World News.
Michael Gudinski. That is the world this Wednesday. The SBS News website has all the latest stories, and you can get news anywhere, anytime with the SBS News app. I'm Darren Mara. Thanks for your company from the team. Good night.